All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of On the Verge podcast. How are you doing today, Tami?
I am doing fantastic this morning. It is such a breath of fresh air to start the morning with you and with these conversations, and it's just great to be in.
Well, oh, shucks.
Well, shucks, how are you?
I know, right? You know, I'm doing really good. And you know, I got a really good full day ahead of me and everything, but you know, one of the things that I think make me feel really good too is I feel that just kind of what everything we talked about in this our last podcast, just everything that's been going on these last couple of weeks, it seems like each week there's some more progress, or there's been a shift for the better in the conversations overall. You know, obviously 2 weeks ago when George Floyd died, there was this, you know, this uproar and in some cases a lot of ruckus and things like that. And I feel like last week, this country overall, and especially this young generation, you know, you and I are both in our mid-30s, but, you know, even people our age and a little younger have finally been able to find their voice in an productive way. And because of that, the conversations are really starting and everything. So I'm just very proud of what has been going on recently. And the work that I feel a lot of people are starting to be able to willing to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that. I've had many conversations with people, and a lot of positive feedback from our last podcast, Racism in America, because, you know, you and I think we're fortunate enough to be able to speak about a heavy topic in an articulate way, but also in an approachable way that allows people to want to come to the table. And I've gotten feedback, I've received calls and texts and everything from friends, family, acquaintances, people that I only follow on social media that I don't really know personally, that something was said to help them understand or help them learn or help. And I'm so fortunate that you and I were able to create a space where people can comfortably listen, but also making them want to get to that point of being uncomfortable to really do the work. So
Yes. And to have those conversations and to have found that this was a conversation that was not only safe to listen to or safe to enter into that mindset, but also it was incredibly welcoming that others could have that. And really, as you said, appreciative that this was a conversation that could be approached, could be listened to, that we could even have that conversation that was really open and honest and authentic. It never started out to be an episode. It started out to be a hello, how are you? How is your heart?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things about On the Verge in this podcast. And I said it to you when we set out to create this podcast. And it's something that I stand true every time I get on the mic and I speak. I want to be as authentic as possible. And in that episode and all previous episodes, every sentence and word that I use and that I say it with intention and with purpose. So, I mean, that last episode was 41 minutes, and I'm so glad that we were able to thoroughly get through a conversation like that. Yeah. But a lot of it was because you and I we wanted to make sure everything that we said had purpose and meaning. And if you were asking me a question, you were genuinely asking a question because we needed those answers, and vice versa. If I were asking you something or we were discussing something and, you know, we come from similar but different walks of life. And, but like I said, I'm just very fortunate and grateful that that episode resonated with a lot of people. even people that had never either listened to our podcast, and I can tell from the stats, and I'm grateful for that, people who maybe never even wanted to listen to a podcast, period. People
Yeah.
who probably before listening to that podcast didn't feel comfortable even engaging in the national conversation because they were afraid they might say something wrong or not know the right thing to say, or all of these different things. And I'm glad that we were able to set a table, if you will, for them to sit at and talk and be open to talk. And with everything that has transpired and this movement and shift that we've been feeling and seeing over the last couple of weeks, and more so this past week, like I said, the peaceful protests, and they've been so beautiful. There were some down the street from my house a few days ago over the weekend. There were some in and around Detroit and Metro Detroit. I'm sure there were some in Georgia and Atlanta. I think they were all over all 50 states and other countries and everything.
And even to the point where our curfew was removed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our curfew got removed yesterday, and so after seeing all of that and starting to feel this movement and this change, now the next question is, now what?
Now what?
And this is a question that everybody, red, yellow, black, and white, left to right, up, down, gay, straight, everybody has to honestly ask themselves in this fight, in this movement, in this time. Now what? Now that in a lot of cases we have the ears of politicians, we have the eyes of our peers and our friends, we have the hearts of our loved ones. Yes, we have. We've captivated an audience.
Worldwide.
So from this moment forward, yes. Now what? And in various aspects of our lives, our personal lives, our relationships, our work lives, and in business and organizations, what does moving forward look like?
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, the conversation was, what does going back to work look like? What does the new way of work look like?
Yes.
Well, now we need to also incorporate and integrate this as well. And what does this new way, the way it should have been, but what does it look like?
And how do we keep that intensity at the level it is so that it keeps this momentum going? Right. It's easy enough, just as we've seen with the coronavirus and how we have pockets of deep following and change toward a global pandemic. And then you see, we're tired of this, we're bored. We're going to forget about it. And this is not a case where we can just forget about it. And I think that's where we have failed as a nation in years past, when there has been an uprising, when there has been affirmative action, and it has not driven through that momentum that it should have, because it did not captivate the hearts, minds, and souls of the people needed to drive that change. And when you start seeing Alexis Ohanian of Reddit step down from his board position, when you start seeing university leaders, professors, or faculty resigning from their positions of authority because they don't see that captivated by the mission and vision of the institution. When you start seeing true movement, when you start seeing the streets filled every single day of peaceful protests, well, great, we've had a week of protests. You've had your signboard, you posted on social media. Okay, great, now what is that? It's the same as, okay, you've gone on your mission trip, you've taken your photo in Africa and you post it on social. What are you going to do? Because that's what I want to know.
Absolutely. One of the things, for myself, I have it. So taking a step back, one of the reasons why I take the time to have these conversations, or I speak to people in a very understanding way, is because we as Black people, we want people to come to the table. We want people to ask the right questions and understand. And I can't immediately, get mad or pop off or get, outraged when they come to me initially with their own preconceived notions or anything like that. So, for example, when you say Black Lives Matter, and some people are very quick to say, well, all lives matter. There is a rage inside of the Black community when people say that, because on one hand, a lot of people who are saying that know exactly what they are saying and what they're trying to entice, and knowing that that's a trigger. But on the other hand, and what I have to do, or at least try to do at times, is educating them on really what Black Lives Matters means. What Black Lives Matter means, the initiatives, trying to bring a level of understanding to them.
Yeah.
And now, sometimes in those conversations, you can realize, okay, there's no movement with this person. There's no common ground or anything like that. And in those conversations, I just shift my energy to other things. And sometimes that's other conversations with other people.
Right.
You're not going to, everybody is not going to understand. Everybody is not going to want to understand. Everybody's not going to move, shift, or whatever. And that's just the way of the world. But for myself, and when I speak about it or whatnot, I hold people in my inner circle and my close friends and families or whatnot. My job to them as their great friend is to try to educate them, try to help them understand and empathize from my perspective. But that's also even in other aspects of my life, in my work, in my relationships, and my friendships, in my community or whatnot. And we all have to try to be that one voice, within our circles.
Yeah.
You might not get everybody, you might not hit everybody or whatnot, but if we can just try to be that one voice in our circles, we can kind of begin to make a change and change the conversation. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, changing the narrative and trying to change the conversation or shifting it. So that's the motivation that I have behind it. And overall, I have seen positive impacts of that.
Yes.
I've had a few back and forth. I remember one in particular last week with a leader that I used to work for, when I lived in California, and she had a Facebook post about it, and I remember that conversation, and we were both very thorough about our reasons and explanations. But it went from her initially stating all lives matter, blah blah blah, and this and being to that extreme, and she had her reasons and everything, but because I took my time and I was able to explain to her a lot of different things, and just a few back and forths, she was able to say, okay, I agree with you 99%.
Listen, that's many more percentile points than it was.
Yes. And I could, because I know her, and I remember when I was working for her, and I know she's a good person. I know she wants to understand, and obviously we're coming from our different walks of life, our different perspectives
so
or whatnot.
hard to have that
and sometimes
mindset.
Sometimes it's just a matter of like, let me try to fill in your blind spots. Let me try to help you really understand and empathize, and I was able to do it in an effective way, to where we could come to an understanding. And she could really see it from my perspective. And one of the things that I've said to people many times is Black Lives Matter does not mean that your life doesn't matter. It just means my life as a Black man has just as much value as yours as fill in the blank, as a white person, as a white woman, as a,
fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank, yes.
And how exhausting must this be for you to have these conversations over and over, but to commit to that and commit to having these conversations? I imagine you are drained, or are you empowered to set that course? Is it frustrating to you to be, okay, Karen, let's have another Facebook feud here? Or is it, I'm inspired, I'm inspiring change, I'm helping?
Yes. There, like I said, there are some that you quickly realize you're not going to be able to penetrate. And I had this conversation with my sister on Sunday morning when we were speaking on the phone. Just, there's some people you're not going to be able to penetrate, and no matter how, and some of those people are the closest ones to you. Some of those people you have known for 10 years, you have broken bread with, you have been in their homes, you've been friendly and close with and everything, and whatnot. And sometimes you just kind of realize, okay, this is not something we're going to agree on. So I can't waste my energy on this conversation with this person,
It's
because
not going to impart that change.
It's going to take away from a more productive conversation with somebody else.
And he mobilizes your momentum internally.
Yes. And then me shifting my energy to somebody else or another productive conversation is where that motivation, if you will, that you spoke about, when that comes in. Last week, like I said, there was between various messages that I received last week, when I explained, what Black Lives Matter really means, and that it doesn't mean, no one else's life matters. I made that declaration and I made that explanation on Facebook and some comments to people. And later on that night, I had a really good friend of mine, a white lady, send me a DM and said, I felt that explanation you gave. She's like, I felt that. And she's like, I was one of those people, when someone said Black Lives Matter, I would say all lives matter. Yeah. She said, but you were able to say it in a way that I could agree with 100% and I could understand. And I said, that's all I asked for. And I said, thank you. And I said, I love you for understanding. I've had other people who, and it's a lot of my white allies too, that are just saying, Willie, keep up that fight, keep that conversation going, keep all of this going. It's very easy for me to get the support from my community and Black people and whatnot, and obviously close friends. But when it's somebody who may not have the exact same problems, but they have this understanding and this empathy, and they can empathize, that's amazing. And those are the reasons why I keep doing it. Like I said, just before we recorded this episode, you and I were talking about the stats and everything and the feedback and all of that from that last episode. And this conversation is working. It's working.
Yes.
So I'm going to keep having it.
We'll keep having it as long as people will listen and then some more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I want to bring up is in our conversation last Wednesday when we were live on Station Head.
Yes.
It very much in the same vein is that comment, I don't see color. And I want you to talk about that in a recorded episode, so we have that and what that sounds like and what that looks like.
Yes. There are a lot of people who, one, mean well, when they say, I don't see color. And it's their way of saying, I treat everybody the same. I don't see color. I won't treat you differently because you're Black or because you're white.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all inclusive. And it's almost the
Yeah.
same as saying, oh, I have 3 Black friends. But the thing with that, and I think some people say that too, because they are afraid to acknowledge the diversity that we have in this country. And one of the things I say to them is, one, it is okay to see color. Because what it does is it's that signal, it's that identifying factor that shows how we are all beautiful but different.
Yes.
We come from different walks of life. We come from different countries. We come from different, cultures, and those cultures that we come from have meanings, have traditions, have all of these things. And if somebody were to say, I don't see color, then I don't think in some cases they would be able to really recognize, like I said, when we get to
where we are right now,
where we are, and why we're fighting for, certain things. So I've seen posts, some people I know, some people I don't know, last week, where they said, oh, I don't see color, blah, 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 hashtag Black Lives Matter. Well, Black is a color. And so, you also can't contradict yourself either. So if you don't see color, then how are you fighting for a cause or an inequality that a particular race or ethnicity or background or whatever is facing? So you have to see color, and it's not a bad thing. Now, if you see color and you're just going to inherently, and just going to treat somebody differently, or don't think that particular race or person or creed or whatever else should have this thing or that thing or whatever based on those races, then that's completely different, but it's okay to see color. I hope you see color. I'm dating a white girl. I hope we see color, because we are approaching this. And I said to her the other day, I said, we may have gotten to this cause in completely different ways, but we are still fighting for the same rights, for the same thing, in the sense that, you might have had your privilege and various things. You might not have had to fight to get to this point, like me and my family and other people may have had, but it doesn't mean, but also we can still stand next to each other and fight together for this. So I have white friends and friends of all different races, and I want them to see my color so that they can understand that, we love each other and we care about each other, and we grew up with each other and whatnot, but my path was a little different than yours. Your path was a little different than mine. There are things I had to deal with that you didn't have to. There are things that I had to endure, maybe silently or publicly, that you didn't have to. So it's okay to see color as a form of appreciation and understanding, but not in the form of discriminating.
From an empathy standpoint, and what I love so much is we started this out as sort of saying the struggle. I mean, one of our first episodes was the true struggle, and we spoke about the struggle of entrepreneurship. And I am so thankful that this has almost come full circle, in that it's the struggle of race. It's the struggle of who we are as people, and how this movement of Black Lives Matter talks about that struggle in life, but not just in life, but in business. And I want to shift this next question, if you're okay with that. In that,
of course,
these organizations, there are many organizations that are, yes, suddenly vocal about this, that are suddenly creating funds, that are suddenly creating opportunities
Yes.
for underrepresented groups, for minorities. How does this make you feel? Is it, listen, it's similar to that women in tech movement or women in social agency movement. Don't put me on your speaker panel because I check the box suddenly and because it's too light. Are you appreciative of this? Because business owners need to know this. Why are you suddenly speaking up about it now? Is this a sort of a, oh, now you want to make this work? Or listen, we're going to do this on our own? Or how does that make you feel when there is this entire shift and attention to it? Is it, yes, we're making progress, or it's like, oh, I'm so frustrated that now you're trying to fit in?
Yes. A couple of things. So one, there are some organizations that maybe a little more quietly were already doing things within their organizations to give their minority group employees and maybe represented employees a voice or a platform. One company in particular, and I only know this because my good friend works there, Amazon. And Amazon has groups and programs and conferences and everything, and all of these different things for Black and minority employees, to give them a place, a space, a platform to connect, engage, encourage, and all these different things. My friend's been there since the fall, and him and I, we speak often about his experiences with it, and he even said to me the other day, I think it was an email or something that he got about something, and he just said, it's like, I feel like I'm a part of, a historic Black college, just because they've been able to, their voice has really been able to resonate and be heard and everything. And they've, like I said, they've been given that platform.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bezos over these last week or so has really been public about different things that Amazon is doing and wants to do. And he even published that email that he got from a customer who went to the website, and he had Black Lives Matter on there.
Yeah, and I'm happy to lose a customer like you.
Yes, exactly. So I think organizations like that, they've always been doing great things, but now I'm glad that they're starting to show it.
Yes.
And I like it that way too, because it's authentic in the sense they've been doing it already. Now they're just letting people know, hey, everyone is promoting the top 100, we're the best place to work and this and that. And a lot of that has to do with because of the pay, because of job growth or whatever. But nobody is really focusing on what is the best place to work for minorities.
For diversity and inclusion. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So Amazon has been a great company for that. And like I said, knowing that just because my good friend works there, Google, I know has a diversity inclusion department, and a lot of what they do is just how they can incorporate diversity and inclusion within their products and having it tested across not just your average white person, but how is it going to look for a dark person, a medium colored person, somebody who eyes might be a little wider apart or whatnot, making sure that their products, and especially video products and facial recognition products, is for the vast majority, including the minorities. So those are organizations that I know just off the top of my head that have been doing great things, and their messages are penetrating. And then, of course, there are other organizations who are now coming to the table and needing and letting their position, if you will, for right now, be known of where they stand. Now, it's very easy to say we stand with inclusion, we stand with, non-racism and all of that stuff, because, well, duh.
You have to say that.
Like you have to. So now the question begins, and I had a conversation with another friend of mine last week who who works in diversity and inclusion for various companies, and we're like, but what does that look like in the workplace?
Mm-hmm.
And after these companies make these stands on wherever they are, what does it look like moving forward, and how are they going to give their employees a voice, whether it be and it's okay to start small, because you got to start with a small step to, you know, to take that first step to start running.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. So I think it's going to be important for these organizations, but even more important for the employees of these organizations to make sure that they are starting to get represented in any way that they can, and almost demanding it. So if you making sure all the way up to the boardroom, making sure there's somebody that looks like you, that thinks like you, that feels like you, that's in a decision-making role. You know, yes, C-level suite, boardroom, management, supervisor levels, minorities and women and whatnot, and just making sure that across the organization, whether you're a 50 employee organization or you're 50,000.
And it goes beyond that. It's not just what you see as an employee in that organization, but it's for everyone that's coming up. It's for little girls, it's for little boys that recognize they can be that person one day. Because someone who looks like me is in that position too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know, and last week we intended to talk about race and equality in the workplace. And I'd love when we get to that point where we can, I'd love for us to have that conversation in a separate episode and really dive into that and uncover some of the strategies of companies that do it really, really well, and what leaders in smaller SMB companies or your solopreneurs can do as well, not only for their clients but for themselves. And I think that would be fantastic for us to really share with that website.
Absolutely. I think so too. So like I said, where we are right now over this past week or so, I think the voices are starting to be heard. People are coming to the table. We might have to get another table, but
that's great. That's what we want.
Absolutely. People are coming to the table. Some conversations are ongoing. Other conversations are starting. But I like where it is right now because it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
But I also believe we all have, and especially anybody that you and I who are recording this podcast, anybody that's listening to this podcast, because if you're listening, that means you're at least open. And everybody in our circles, we all have a responsibility to make sure that conversation moves forward. That we don't just keep this conversation. Yes, we don't just keep this conversation here. When we go out to our meetings the rest of the day, making sure, and it's not that you gotta be blatant and knock somebody over the head with it, but just making sure that
but if you need to, we condone that.
There you go. But making sure that your voice is heard, that you are recognized in any situation that you are in, and that you have that support. And if you don't feel that you have that support, ask for it.
Yeah.
And if you ask for it, one or two things will happen. You will get it and you'll be glad that you asked, or you won't get it and it's time to move on from whatever that situation is. That relationship, that friendship, that job, that whatever it is, that environment. So we have to begin to ask and demand what we need, and let the chips fall where they may. It's going to be uncomfortable. Absolutely. It's going to it's going to hurt because there's always growing pains. It's going to be challenging. It's going to some people might say to you, how dare you have the audacity to think this, to do that, to feel this, to try this. And the audacity, you have that within you. People have said that to me many times. How dare, it's like, Willie, how do you have the audacity to do this or try this or whatever? And it's just like, well, why not?
Why not?
So what's next? Whatever. So the question is, what now? What? And blank. And why not? So whatever it is, just fill in that blank. What's next? A revolution. Why not? What's next? More conversations. Why not?
Why not?
Yes.
What's next? Why not? The title of the 6th episode.
Yes. But I, you know, like I said earlier, Tam and I, we're just forever thankful and grateful for the people who are listening to the podcast, who's sharing it. I've had friends that have been sharing it, and I love you guys for that. I hope you guys continue to listen and continue to share. You can also catch us on Wednesday nights on the Stationhead app. So you have to go to Google Play or Apple.
How about we start this again? If you have an iOS device,
there we go.
If you have an iPhone or you on iOS, same thing. You are able to download the Stationhead app and listen to the Motown Motivated station on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. We will have many of these conversations, but they are unfiltered. This is also unfiltered. It's raw. And we just roll with it. We have a great playlist too. You should join us. We'll take questions, live questions as well.
What she said. But yes, so I definitely love you guys, your feedback and everything from this episode and even our last episode, Racism in America. Comments, questions, concerns. Let's keep this conversation going. And as Tami said, we're going to be on Stationhead app tomorrow night, continuing this conversation even more unfiltered. But yes, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And we will see you guys or we'll talk to you guys next time on the Verge podcast.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.